Welcome to the official Finovate podcast with Greg Palmer. In 2007, Finovate set out to create a dynamic fintech showcase featuring live 7-minute demos. For more than a decade, our global events series has brought together tens of thousands of people from across the fintech spectrum to see cutting-edge technologies. Now you can find out what goes on behind the scenes as key influencers and innovators share the stories that they don't get to tell you from stage. Here's a glimpse of what we have in store this episode.
And really what you want to do is just make sure you're not the most profitable target to go after.
I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you.
And now, your host, Greg Palmer.
Welcome to the Finovate podcast. This is Greg Palmer. We've got a great one for you today. I'm going to be chatting with Kevin Gosschalk of Arkose Labs. Kevin was able to do something that has historically been very difficult at Finovate events, and that is to win a Best of Show trophy as a security company. Not something that is very common at all over our history. And we're going to talk with Kevin a little bit about his technology and how he was able to create a compelling message that really resonated with our audience. Let's go into the interview. Pleasure to have you joining us, Kevin. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it.
So for those of you who haven't gotten to see his video, it is available up at finovate.com/videos. Kevin, can you give us just kind of a quick overview of what Arkose Labs does and why you think you were able to win Best of Show?
Certainly. So we're in the fraud and abuse prevention space. We're also quite fortunate to be venture-backed by PayPal. So we work with them strategically on merchants that have chargeback rates and things like that on the payment flow. But fundamentally, what our job is as a solution provider is to figure out what's the reason why a fraudster is going about doing something. It's not how they're doing it, it's the reason. And the reason is there's a profit incentive. And our job is to make it less profitable to attack the merchants we protect than other opportunities out there on the web. So basically, increasing the cost to the point where it kind of breaks their financial motive.
I think you call that hacker economics during your time on stage. Just sort of that idea that if I can disincentivize you to approach my bank, you'll go somewhere else where you can have a greater rate of return, a little bit easier time of it.
That's correct.
So one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but there is a reputation among the fintech community. Security can be a little bit dry. It's a demo that sometimes can put people to well, for lack of a better word, put people to sleep a little bit. That was obviously not a problem with your demo. I know you put a lot of work into it, and I'd like to dive into that work a little bit because it's so vital, I think, to get the message out there, especially initially when you're trying to capture that attention. Can you tell us a little bit about what your process was as you looked at creating that demo?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that go into, I think, public messaging. One of them is to make people pay attention, to a large audience. I give quite a few stage demos and presentations at different conferences. It's about making it both personal to the individual, so making it something that they can latch onto as an individual, but also making it relevant to their business requirements and needs. And that's something that, we put a lot of attention and care into when we're kind of building presentations. And, you want to make it fun and engaging, of course, as part of that process. But really, fundamentally, you really want to connect with the audience on a personal level just as much as you do with their, the reason why they're there to represent a company. So that's two kind of key tricks and techniques that we apply.
Yeah, well, then of course you have a little bit of showmanship in there as well, just to that kind of attention-getting bit. I especially liked, and we talked about this during the coaching process ahead of time, that you were going to pull on a separate hat and for a moment act as a black hat actor, a bad actor, which I think went over very well, potentially too well, because it showed just how easy it is to go out and buy data, not even necessarily buy it, just find it and start to throw it in mass at logins and just sort of see what sticks. And I think the first 2 minutes of your demo, you had something like 100 different logins after what appeared to be 90 seconds of work.
Right. Yeah. So we wanted to demonstrate that what criminals are doing to create these fraudulent attacks, do things like account takeover attacks, they're not actually really that sophisticated for the fraudster. There's really good tools out there. And that's one of the tools we demonstrated is a product called Sentry MBA, which is it's a free hacker tool used to make these attacks. It itself is really sophisticated software, but it's open source between the hacker community. And, you can be anyone and you can go and get credentials and use this software for free. There's YouTube tutorials that will teach you how to do these things. And you can make very sophisticated fraudulent attacks against banks and break in and commit pretty serious, payment fraud. But from a technical standpoint, you don't have to write any code or anything like that. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Well, that's, I think, one of the scariest aspects of it, right? Just how easy it is. And we were talking a little bit about this before we pushed record here. The idea that you can't really stop this from happening. It's too complex of a problem to really completely eliminate it. Really, all you can do is try and make it so that you're not a target, so that you're not the lowest hanging fruit available. Again, coming back to that hacker economics question, that you don't represent best return on investment. In this case, investment being the time spent.
Yeah, that's right. We need to put enough barriers in front of these attacks to the point where it's actually easier for them to point these tools at someone else instead of you, because for whatever reason it doesn't work out of the gate, or there's more defenses that they have to try and overcome as part of that. There's more things they have to buy, proxies and services like this to get around IP rate limiting. All these different tiers of defenses you put in front decreases the ROI for their attack. And really what you want to do is just make sure you're not the most profitable target to go after.
Right. Yeah. I think the other line that came up while we were chatting ahead of time, I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you, is basically the long and short of it. Don't be the slowest person there. Don't be the easiest target. And, I think that was a really compelling case that you were able to make from stage. And it sounds like you've been able to make that case in a couple of other key areas as well. Obviously, being backed by PayPal goes a long way towards giving you some legitimacy as you get up there on stage and being able to make that impression with the audience. I do have to ask, because it looked really easy for you to put on that black hat, both literally and figuratively. How easy would it be for you to use your powers for evil if you wanted to sort of switch teams, as they say?
The stories and knowledge and expertise that we accumulate as defenders is quite significant, right? So fraudsters normally come about things learning on forums and trying to reverse engineer the merchants and the banks from their perspective. But we see it from both perspectives. We see the defenses being used against every single specific kind of attack. It would be, I always joke that if this doesn't work out, I'll go be a black hat. I'll make more money doing that instead.
Right. That's your hacker economics, right? You better hope that this is profitable. So there's a little plug, by the way, for Arkose Labs, but let's all keep Kevin on the side of good and righteousness by making sure that his company takes off, or else you'll just see him across the board.
I'm a born criminal. I'm Australian. So, this is just my birth. We're already convicts anyway. So who better to help you fight fraud than people that are born that way? That's how I see it. Right.
That's a dangerous slope to go down once you start going down that road. But I do see where you're coming from. And I have to say, I do believe it, and looking at it, I think that's something I could easily imagine would be possible for you. We're coming up on the end of our time. Any final thoughts that you just want to share? Any important things that you want our audience to know?
I think we just want to make sure everyone uses good password posture and follows the rules of keeping yourself safe online.
Yeah, that's really, again, coming back to that. You can't necessarily prevent it outright. There's no sort of guarantee magic bullet to it, but there's a lot of steps you can take to make sure that you're not a target.
That's right.
Great stuff there with Kevin. Very fascinating conversation and a really unique way of thinking about security. I'd invite you again to check out their video at finovate.com/videos. And if you enjoyed what you're listening to, hit subscribe, hit like, and don't forget to check out finovate.com for information on all of our upcoming shows. We are about to embark on our international tour, heading to Singapore for Finovate Asia, October 14th and 15th, Dubai for Finovate Middle East, November 20th and 21st. We're going to Berlin this year for Finovate Europe, and that'll be February 11th through the 13th, and then we'll return to San Francisco for Finovate Spring 2020. The discount code Finovate Podcast will get you 20% off tickets to any of those shows. If you're interested in learning more about how you can participate as a sponsor, speaker, or presenter, drop us an email at info@finovate.com. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us on the Finovate Podcast this week. Brought to you by the team behind Finovate and produced in association with Provoke Media. Make sure you tell your friends about the show, leave us a review on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you listen to our show, and check out our upcoming events at finovate.com.